Welcome back to the Eng 2003 videos. Now, in the last clip we talked about rhetoric. Now I'd like to revisit the axioms of communication. These were also introduced to you in Eng 1101, and now we want to expand on those more. Now remember, axioms aren't tips. They're not methods. They're not ways of conceptualizing. Axioms are the fundamental principles that we take as true, things that govern our communication. The first one is that communication is an interaction. So communication doesn't just involve me as the person who's delivering a message, but it involves the audience. So communication is an interaction between people rather than simply an exchange of information. Communication involves an element of relation. So if we understand that first axiom, we can see that all communication involves building and maintaining human relationships. So it's not just about content, it's about the relationship. I'm sure we've all received some kind of email. We look at that email, we see who that's from, we think about our relationship with that person, and we decide whether or not to read that email. Or we decide in how much detail we'll read that email. Or we decide how we're going to judge that content based on the relationship we have with that person. In the third axiom, communications take place within a context. So we need to understand the persons, objects, events, and relations involved with the communication. And this involves your ability to accommodate or to adjust your content, your tone, your style to the context in which you're communicating. So messages don't stand alone, they stand within some kind of social context, historical context, professional context, and a personal context. The fourth axiom of communication is that communicating is the principal way that we establish ourselves and maintain our credibility. Like it or not, people judge us based on how effectively we communicate. Picture this, you're in your dentist's office and they're explaining to you a procedure about extracting your teeth. How good would you feel if the dentist doesn't look you in the eye when they tell you what they're doing? Or they giggle as they tell you what they're going to do, or they mumble their words. You know, we might not understand all the technical details that the dentist is telling us, but we make our decision based on how well they communicate, the quality of the message, whether they're making eye contact with us. Communication is the main means through which we exert influence. And by influence we mean our ability to gain cooperation of others, to gain compliance with others, for people to buy into our ideas or buy our products. It's fundamental for survival professionally, for our comfort, for our success. If we want to have an impact, we need to communicate. The sixth axiom is that communication involves an interpersonal risk. Because our worthiness as professionals and as individuals, our worthiness is judged so much based on how effectively we communicate. So this means that every time that we do communicate, our reputation is at risk. We are being judged based on how well we communicate. So there's that risk there. Many of us might be uncomfortable picking up the phone and making a phone call to someone else. We might seek comfort in sending an email. We're a bit more uncomfortable picking up the phone and having a conversation. Part of that is because of that interpersonal risk involved with having a direct conversation. It's much less risky to just send an email. Let's think back to that dentist. That close relationship between the credibility and communication. We'll take that dentist to be a lot more credible. We'll be a lot more comfortable if that dentist is speaking clearly to us, looking us in the eye, communicating with a professional tone. In the seventh axiom, communication is often ambiguous. What is unsaid can be as important as what is said. This may be nonverbal clues. Think about eye contact, facial expressions, vocal tone, gestures, physical movement. Nonverbal expressions are body language. We can communicate openness, trust, happiness, anger, disapproval, all through nonverbal means. Written communication doesn't offer the reader opportunity to judge us based on our personal appearance or our body language, but there's still a lot of nonverbal information about our attitudes, about our commitment. That could be in the attention to detail, the attention to spelling, punctuation, what the document looks like, along with the tone and style of our writing. Effective communication is audience-centered, not self-centered. That comes back to pathos in the rhetorical triangle, focusing on the audience and who you're delivering the message to. The final axiom is that communication is pervasive. You can't not communicate. If you're trying not to communicate and you're trying to disengage, that also sends a message. It sends a message that you're disinterested in the task at hand. So it's impossible to not communicate. Hopefully this was a good review. Hopefully you learned something new. These 9 axioms of communication will be woven throughout Eng 2003. So it might be useful to keep these handy because we'll go back at them and revisit these frequently throughout the course. Thank you.